Hello and welcome to Retire Early Lifestyle, where we're fixing up an old house without a pile of cash during our Retire Early Lifestyle. So are you one of the millions of Americans that are living on just their Social Security in their retirement years? Or maybe just a small income? The new report is 40% of older Americans rely solely on Social Security for their retirement income. This happens because of numerous different reasons. Perhaps some Americans are also paying off debt, or perhaps they had an emergency and spent their savings, or perhaps they didn't count on hyperinflation to come knocking on their door once they hit retirement age. The Social Security Administration likes to let people know they help out with the incoming inflation by paying out a little bit more with what is referred to as the Cost of Living Adjustment, or COLA. But it does not even come close to the actual inflation number. What is the real inflation number? Well, how you figure out the real inflation number is by the price of eggs, bread, and meat, among other things. The foods people buy every day. What are prices doing on these things? We've seen 10%, 20%, and higher just in the last 90 days, the highest it's ever been. And then Social Security Administration tax on 3.2% in 2024. That's nothing. That's not going to help with hyperinflation. Hello, you're a little bit off the mark. According to this article, inflation has gone up almost 16% since 2021. Wrong. It's up way more than that. Did you look at real estate prices lately? The inflation numbers being put out there, as you can see by the articles, are way off the mark. They don't want to scare people, but that won't stop the sticker shock when you go make the purchases, will it? We understand it's tight trying to subsist on a small Social Security budget with this terrible inflation. That's where we come in. We want to encourage you with some ways to make life easier for you, if that's okay with you. Now, most of these ways are not necessarily going to be monetary, like scrimping and saving to make your budget go further. These types of videos are a dime a dozen, but no one tells you what Frank and I are about to show you in this video, which is attitude is the foundation of our spending habits and the way we live. Let me put it to you bluntly. How we think is how we spend money, and therefore is how we live. The foundation of our life comes from within. We have chosen exactly where we're at in life by our choices that we make. Sometimes our choices lead to prosperity, and sometimes not. Things happen to people sometimes beyond their control. Chronic illnesses and or misfortune can happen to anyone, regardless of their positive attitude or big plans in life. And some people would rather have a balanced, high quality of life instead of spending all their time pursuing riches at the expense of happiness. So we're not judging why someone may be in a tight financial spot in life. It does happen to good people. And it's not always something that happens to you. Frequently, people are exactly where they want to be by choice, although not necessarily. Here is a true story I'm about to tell you that confirms this. When we were in Cuenca, Ecuador, there used to be this little old lady that would walk around all over the place barefoot, and an expat saw this and felt pity on her and bought her a beautiful, expensive pair of new walking shoes. And the little old lady thanked the expat for the gift and walked away wearing the shoes. But a few days later, the expat came upon the little old lady again, and guess what? She was barefoot again. The shocked expat asked, "Where are the shoes I bought you?" And the little old lady replied, "I prefer to walk barefoot, so I gave the shoes to my sister." If that's not a confirmation that people are exactly where they want to be in life, I don't know what is. The little old lady wants to walk barefoot, so let her walk barefoot. She must have some tough feet. So now let's put fear and worry in its proper place.
I see an awful lot of interest in the subject of Social Security, and let's be clear and put everything on the table. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear. What's going to happen, and what's going to happen to my purchasing power, what's going to happen to my retirement, what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to everything, what's going to happen to my Social Security. And so in the interest of helping the viewer lose their fear, let's talk about how fear is an emotion. Let's dissect this thing. It is an emotion. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, right? So the first step is to put the fear in its proper perspective and acknowledge that we're dealing with an emotion. And in my life, in dealing with people, I noticed that it's common for people to be emotional and to allow emotions to rule the day, so to speak. Ancient wisdom gives us other options, however. And so putting a fear in its perspective that it is an emotion, let's look at the emotion, because once we give in to fear, it's like everything that we do and think about is regulated, colored, let's say, by that fear. You've heard of rose-colored glasses. Well, this wouldn't be rose-colored glasses. This would be wearing dark sunglasses indoors. You're not going to see anything. You're going to stumble. And that's a really good analogy, actually. So once we recognize that we're dealing with an emotion and putting it in perspective, we can understand the next thing I'm going to say, and that is that only once we've taken those dark shades off, right, can we start seeing some of the other options that perhaps we hadn't seen before.
When we worry about what other people think of our choices, and some people even fear what other people think, then we should realize that worry and fear are most of the time misplaced emotions that we can control. Just like a bad habit, we can replace it with a good habit in order to lose the bad habit of worrying what other people think of the life choices we make. One reason why the Keep Up with the Joneses lifestyle is alive and well is because of this way of thinking. True story, many years ago when I was in my early 20s, I used to fear going to thrift stores. Everything I bought had to be brand spanking new, and I would often use my credit card to buy it. I would only shop in certain stores like Nordstrom's, and I would tend to only buy name brands and things that were really expensive because it felt better knowing I was wearing expensive name brands from the big department stores. One day Frank and I were out and about, and we passed a Goodwill store, and Frank said, "Let's go in there," and I told him I would wait in the car. Now this is a true story and one you might get a chuckle out of. He told me it was too hot to wait in the car. He just wanted to see what a Goodwill store was like because we'd never been in a thrift store before. He was persistent with me to go into the thrift store with him. It was probably one of his strategies to get me to stop buying all the expensive clothes I was buying. Seriously. To make a long story short, I explained to him that I would be embarrassed to be seen in the Goodwill if someone I knew was in there. This is how misplaced my thinking used to be. I was literally in fear to be seen in the thrift store. I had the Joneses attitude. It's a flawed mindset built upon misplaced thinking. Frank said something to me that day that made me think twice about my attitude. He said to me, "Angie, if they see you in the Goodwill, that means they're shopping in the thrift store too." So you see, you're not the only one shopping at the thrift stores, he said. And I thought about it for a minute, and it made so much sense that I decided to go inside just to check it out. I wasn't going to buy anything, of course. But I should tell you, I was amazed at all the nice name brand clothing in the Goodwill for much, much less than what I was paying for it. I now look back and laugh my head off at my flawed way of thinking. It was regulated by the fear emotions I had of needing to impress people. Well, I was young and I didn't know any better, but I learned to know better, and I'm glad that I did because I was letting the fear of what others think of me override my senses, literally. I took off the dark sunglasses for good and started to live my life without the worry of what people might think of me. This is what the Joneses attitude is all about. We want to look good for others rather than living by the means that God has given us. Money is important. Working is important, but not for what people use money in their jobs for. I think we've all been misled. As we've said before in other videos, we're taught from a young age to work like dogs, go into debt, continue to overwork ourselves until finally, in our elder years, we're too spent to enjoy them. That's just wrong. But thinking outside of the box allows us to see that we don't have to be stuck following the way everyone else lives. That is their life, and this is ours.
In thinking out of the box, we have to start with that first step of saying, all right, this is an emotion and I need to remove it, and then I need to start rationally thinking about how to conquer it, how to overcome it, how to live with it, how to be happy with it. Henry David Thoreau said something about make the best out of your lot in life. So that's an attitude. I mean, it's a proper attitude that does not subject itself to fear. It weighs all the options and perhaps pursues options, and you just naturally start thinking out of the box, and as such you can embrace some of the options that perhaps you had dreaded or you feared. Because removing emotion can be one of the hardest things, and it's a habit. Let's face it, we become ingrained in habits, and if we've done a kind of life where we've put aside our life for a deferred life plan, and that means that we have all our lives fallen into habits, a habitual way of living, just to say, oh, do this, do that. It's going to require that you understand that losing a habit requires that you do something even if you don't think it, because again, it's very likely that you're coloring your thought process with your fear emotion, and therefore this requires you do something that you normally wouldn't because of your lack of ability to rationalize while you're in fear. You see what I'm saying? And so we need to just do it, right? And we need to do it for minimum 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, every day. We have to force ourselves to do it every day until it becomes a habit. So in essence, we're replacing old fear-thinking habits with new rational thinking, options thinking ability, and embracing a new attitude of thinking out of the box.
We all can enjoy our lives, but we're sure that ours is much less fearful, stressful, and more enjoyable just because we don't have the burden of keeping up with everyone else or living in fear that it might all be taken away from us. You see, the fear of losing what you've worked so hard for every day is the real fear. Round and round people go on the hamster wheel. If they repossess your big new SUV, how will you get to work? If you default on your loan and the bank takes your big beautiful house, you won't have a roof over your head and you'll be homeless. Now what? These are real fears to think about. But, and this is a big but we got ourselves into the situation in the first place because of our misplaced fear and worrying about what people will think of us. Or else maybe we would have looked outside the box for a different way to do things without the need to impress others or worry about what they will think. Now let's back up to the beginning. Our attitude is the foundation of our spending habits and the way we live. End story.
It's like once you remove the emotion, you start seeing things you hadn't seen before, and things that you would have given like the brush off to, your mind starts giving you possibilities, and you start opening up to the idea of possibility thinking. And possibility thinking is amazing. It just, like in my life, possibility thinking has opened up so many different experiences that, had I given in to the spirit of fear in my younger age, it was a gradual process. You had to learn to stop thinking in fear. And so I'm giving you my lifelong wisdom here to help you out. And remember that the ancient words say that he does not give us the spirit of fear, but of love, joy, and a sound mind. So that means that fear is not from that side of the story, it's from some other story. That's something to really think about.
Okay, everyone. Hope you got something out of that, even if it was a little something. A little something can go long ways. Remember, we've always said on this channel, our videos instruct and provide insights to good living. It pays to watch the whole video. Be blessed, everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.